Hello and welcome to the debate. I'm your host Sana Maqbool with you at PTV WORLD. In the debate today, we will be talking about two very important issues. One with reference to the story that has surfaced, which has yet again pointed out the state of affairs in India and the kind of regime that we have in place in India, which is something that cannot be called as a responsible state or government. What we've seen is that 2 Indians among 8 have been arrested in Nepal for possessing uranium-like substances. This is something that has happened before as well. And these people have been arrested in Nepal with uranium-like substances, and many others have also been arrested with regards to information of the same. The substances has been sent for testing purposes and will later be investigated as well. But of course, this points out to how exactly is this uranium or uranium-like substance brought in the access of people, of the common people, and how this is being used for illegal trade and for money. When we see these incidents also happened previously within India as well, it of course points out and questions the entire state of nuclear security of India, because of course it is a nuclear armed state and it is the responsibility of the government to ensure that the protocols regarding nuclear substances are met. And because this has not been happening in the past, this poses serious concerns for security in the region as well. We will be exploring this topic in further detail in the show today. We will also be taking a look at the situation in Afghanistan and Pakistan's measures with regards to what is going on in Afghanistan, and also with reference to the terrorist attacks that have been happening in the country. Pakistan has asked the UN Security Council to also help in this matter and also play its role in contributing towards making sure that no other soil is being used against any other territory as well. We've seen in the past also that there has been evidence linked to external threats, to external factors playing a role with regards to the terrorist attacks in Pakistan, Afghanistan soil being used by Indian forces as well with regards to what is going on. Something which has been pointed out by Umar Siddiq as well, who is the Council Permanent Mission to the United Nations. He has spoken about this in the meeting, and he has also said that this is something that has been brought to light previously as well, and there has to be something that needs to be done about it. This happened on Monday, where we saw that the UN Counterterrorism Committee meeting turned into a battle of words, and we saw that the Indian side was also talking about Pakistan's involvement in the kind of terrorist activities allegedly in Indian illegally occupied Kashmir, to which Umar Siddiq has also pointed out that there needs to be a distinction between freedom movements and definitions of terrorism. Some things that some lines which are being blurred on purpose to, of course, go ahead with measures that give impunity to a lot of human rights violations and abuse that has been happening within Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. So this will be our second segment of the show today. As you can see on your screens, I've been joined by Raja Faisal and Farrukh Pitafi in this show as usual, and we will also be joined online by our respective guests. I will introduce them as soon as they've joined us online. For our first segment, we will be talking about, of course, the overall nuclear security of the Indian government and the state of affairs that, of course, have been brought to light. We have been joined by Dr. Adil Sultan, who's HOD Department at University Islamabad Strategic Studies, and he's also a nuclear security expert. Thank you very much, Dr. Adil Sultan, for being with us on the show. Dr. Adil, I'll start with you. When we speak about uranium or uranium-like substances, of course, this is a major question mark, and it is quite important for us to understand the kind or the scale of threat that we're dealing with. Can you first identify for us the amount that is questionable in the hands of the common man, or in the hands where it's not regulated, which can pose a serious threat to the government or the region?
Yeah, thank you. It's a very crucial and critical issue, because this is not the first time that such amount of uranium, maybe it's uranium ore and it's not fissile material, but still this is a material which should be regulated by Indian regulatory authorities. So this is not the first time. Last year, the 2 episodes happened in India in somewhere in June and May, and significant quantity of uranium, although this is not sufficient to make a bomb. But still, if you start to see these trends, these are disturbing trends where non-state actors, they are having easy access to this uranium. And this also indicates that there is thriving a market in India which is indulging into this business.
Right, and this, of course, is even more worrisome because we see that when we talk about these markets that exist within India as well, and then, of course, they have been found previously and this time around as well in Nepal. There seems to be many stages where there are loopholes and gaps that need to be regulated and to be dealt with. How exactly do you think can this be brought to light in terms of the way that a responsible nuclear armed state needs to act in the international arena? Of course, as a nuclear armed state, it is responsible and it needs to be abide by the international norms and laws in place with regards to nuclear security. But if that is not being done so, what is the consequence of that?
Yes, this is important. All these issues that you highlighted, because India is a nuclear weapon state. It has significant military program and the civilian nuclear program. It has obligations under the International Atomic Energy Agency towards its civilian program, which includes several treaties and conventions under which India is supposed to take certain actions to prevent such incidents. Then there are certain resolutions also, like United Nations Security Council Resolution 1540, which was passed under Chapter 7 in 2004, which also makes it obligatory for all member states to strengthen their national control so that this kind of material, nuclear related material, doesn't fall into the hands of the non state actors. But repeated incidents of such kind in India indicate probably there are lax control in India's domestic nuclear security architecture. And there are also not sufficient laws to prosecute these individuals, because in the incidents that we saw last year, and this was the Indian authorities, they tried to cover it up by saying probably it was not a fissile material and other explanations which are not
Right. When we
acceptable.
say uranium-like substance, what other substances are we talking about? And if we're talking about other radioactive materials as well, are all of them as serious or potentially dangerous as uranium?
Yes, all such material should be regulated under national controls, and there are procedures for that. So this is by saying that this is uranium-like material. Of course, it will be proven later on, but still, this is not the first time that is happening in India or in India's neighborhood. Like this episode happened in Nepal, but the source probably is from India. So.
Right. Dr. Saab, since we are talking about proliferation, earlier you said that this quantity might not be enough for making a nuclear bomb, but dirty bombs can use far lesser, radioactive material. That is one question regarding whether that can be done. And the second thing is consequences. We have been told throughout past 20 years that there is this boogeyman who will actually spring at you if there is something wrong with your nuclear arsenal. And now India keeps on doing it. Its nuclear arsenal doesn't seem to be safeguarded. It is building an underground nuclear city as well, and yet no consequences, sir.
Yes, this is ironic because the entire India-US nuclear deal, or India's inclusion into mainstream non-proliferation regime, was based on this premise that India is a responsible country, and this narrative was sold by the West to rest of the international community, that India needs to be brought into mainstream non-proliferation regime, and India should be integrated into nuclear suppliers group and other regimes, just on this premise that India has a very strong credential as a nuclear weapon state. But what we are seeing over the past few years, there are repeated episodes of this nuclear proliferation or attempted proliferation. Now, if we see about this material, like you said, why it is significant? Because these are smaller quantities which have been caught. And there could be significant other material which probably messed out, or it went into the wrong hands. And there are potential buyers for this material, and for what purpose they are buying this material. So these things have to be investigated by the international community. And I would also like to state over here that all countries, they are responsible, because nuclear security is a national responsibility, but they have certain responsibilities under international norms and arrangements with the IEA. For example, there is incident tracking database which IEA maintains. So any episode which happens in your own territory, that country is responsible to report that. And that was institutionalized for the same purpose, to curb this nuclear smuggling. But it appears that nobody is asking from India. India is not also reporting to the international agencies about these incidents. So what India had been saying, that it is a responsible country, it is one of the leaders in nuclear security, it has strong credentials. This doesn't seem to be true, as the episodes.
That, of course, has been put under question.
Yeah. Dr. Saab, I just wanted to ask you about, if we look at the recent times, there were roughly around 41 incidents in which, through different ways, this uranium, it actually ended up getting sold, and majority of the times it had a lot to do with the factor of corruption, where the security forces which are supposed to be there to ensure that it doesn't get out, that is involved, plus a few of the junior level scientists within the system of India, they are involved in it, and it is becoming a sort of lucrative business within Indian nuclear program. So could we say that it should be worrisome for the world, that what if the uranium which is getting sold elsewhere, it can be sold to countries that are running their programs like Iran, like North Korea, and it might be getting sold there. And the biggest worry would be that if organizations, terrorist organizations like ISIS, what if they get a hold of it, or Boko Haram, for saying fact up, they get a hold of it, what would happen then? And don't you think that the world is quiet, and if IAEA is not probing, which they should be right now after all of these incidents, they should be probing these cases, and if they are not doing it, that is just because of one reason, that India is portraying as frontline for the US?
Yes, some of the apprehensions that you voiced, they have some substance. I would not specifically name countries who could be potential buyers, because we don't know how many countries implicitly are vying to build a nuclear program. So one conclusion that we can draw, that there are potential buyers. Uh, for this, there is a thriving nuclear black market where there are buyers also and there's sellers also. And India has emerged as one major source, because India's nuclear program has expanded after the India-US nuclear deal, because they are building new facilities like Pitafi Saab also talked about this nuclear city. There are certain facilities that India has kept outside the safeguards. What is happening in those facilities? The fissile material is being produced more than what the India requires. And I would also like to, because your question also referred to why international community is not asking. There are certain obligations on the US also, because India-US nuclear deal, under that arrangement, there was a clause under the Hyde Act that US President would provide certification every year to the US Congress in case there is increase in India's fissile material stocks or more facilities are being built. But over the last few years, we have seen that India has multiplied its fissile material building capacity by constructing new facilities, which we call as nuclear city. But nobody from the United States or other countries from the nuclear suppliers group are asking these questions from India, but that you had certain obligations under the US India US nuclear deal. Why you are expanding those? So
Right.
that's
Dr.
also
Zip,
worrisome. Yeah.
that is a very good point. Let me ask you another thing. Until 2017, Foreign Policy magazine, other various international journals were meticulously reporting on India's nuclear problems. Then all of a sudden, everything went quiet. Is it because Donald Trump actually rose to power? Is it because of some kind of new found clout that all these news reports have been purged out of websites and their reports?
Yes, India has that kind of clout in the international academia also, but this dates back to 2005, once India-US strategic partnership that evolved, and India-US nuclear deal came into was negotiated in 2008. So this perception about India started to transform even before 2005, and that is how this narrative was sold, that India is a responsible country, hence it qualifies even though it had not signed the nuclear non-proliferation treaty, so it must be accommodated into mainstream non-proliferation regime. So this narrative predates Trump's era. It was essentially started from President Clinton's time, but then President Obama
Yeah.
gave impetus, and this is how this all exceptions and exemptions were created, and India was brought
Right.
into the nuclear.
Right,
Yeah.
Dr. Adil, but over time, has this narrative not been damaged? Has there been no impact in the way that India is being looked at as a responsible state, not just with regards to what we're discussing right now, but even with the other measures that the Indian regime has been taking? There is hardly anything that we can call is something that comes from a responsible state. And then you have examples like having uranium in the hands of common people, something which should seriously raise alarm bells, yet we are not hearing them. Is it something that is not serious enough at the moment for the international community to take a look at it, or are we waiting for it to raise to a certain level where they'll take action?
And
Dr. Adil
with your
especially.
permission, let me build on the previous question and this one, Sana. And that is, Dr. Saab, the reason why I actually brought up foreign policy. I was quoting this report from Foreign Policy magazine. Actually, it produced chapters upon chapters on this issue in 2017. But later on, it has been removed or it has disappeared. My question at this moment is because in the West, there is a question of censorship for China, especially Hollywood and everything. Don't you think that simultaneously for India something similar is happening, that every negative reference is being purged from serious academic journals because the editors or chief editors now are Indian?
It has some linkage, but in the end, it is all politics. So India is now important for United States geopolitical interests. So India can get away with anything. And that is how the narratives are shaped by powerful countries. And since most of the Western think tanks, they are influential, and they have the Indian scholars, they have the influence, and also because the U.S. interests are aligned with India, that is how. Whatever India does, it gets away, whether it is extremism in India or proliferation in India or whatever India does, it gets away. But I would also like to say, notwithstanding what United States does or does not do with India or other countries, but international agencies like I talked about the UN Security
Aye.
Council Resolution 1540. It is obligatory for all countries. And then there is IAEA. There are certain procedures, there are certain norms and regimes. There are countries who are worried, but because of the influence of United States and India, there is not much noise about this. And I would
Right, because
also like,
Dr. Adil, the word obligatory loses its meaning
Yeah, it does.
completely. What difference does it make if it's obligatory or not?
And I just wanted to ask, does it put US in a position where it hasn't got any morality left in terms of saying anything to North Korea or Iran when it comes to asking them to shut their nuclear programs? Because what if they turn around and they say that you don't say anything to India, and why are you coming towards us again and again?
Faisal Saab, there is no morality in international relations. That principle we should all be very clear. What is happening, what has happened in our neighborhood in Afghanistan or elsewhere, we all are very clear. There is no morality. And once it comes to major powers, they do whatever they feel like, what is in their best interest, and that is why there are no questions being asked from India.
Right, Dr. Adil, I understand that, but interests are important in international politics, and perhaps the kind of situation that we're dealing with can come back and bite India as well, and of course also perhaps influence other countries in the region and in the world as well. When you have uranium or uranium-like substances moving across channels, across countries without regulation, without control, isn't this something which potentially has the impact of affecting everybody?
Absolutely, and that is why it is crucial, irrespective of what is happening at the geopolitical level between United States and India, or how India is being propped up to contain China. This is a serious matter because it concerns international security. If these non-state actors or some of the irresponsible regimes, they get access to this kind of material, and they have their covert nuclear weapons program, it would be a major damage for the nuclear non-proliferation regime. And world has made lots of effort to fill those gaps, but we continue to see such episodes, and that's major concern.
Absolutely. But if we see that this, and we understand that this is a serious matter, I'm sure that countries across the world also understand that. But what is the serious action that needs to be taken at the moment?
Serious action, I think one is the 1540 committee. That is one institution where these questions can be raised or brought to their notice, because they do make reports of such episodes in countries. That's one forum. The second is about the IAEA, because IAEA is supposed to ensure that there's safeguarded facilities. No, there's no pilferage of such material from those facilities. IAEA need to ask, International Atomic Energy needs to ask these questions from India, whether these are being proliferated from the safeguarded facilities or not, and whether India is fulfilling its obligations, the safeguards obligations with the IAEA or not. That's second. Third is, I think, the NGOs, the think tank, which have been very vocal in raising these issues because it concerns international security. Those think tanks need to be questioned. Why they are not raising these issues once it comes to India? They had been raising voices against Iran, North Korea, and even against Pakistan in the past. But once it comes to India, the major influential think tank who work on nuclear policy issues in Washington, London, nobody is raising those voices. And also in Pakistan, there are several think tanks, they work on nuclear issues. They need to highlight these issues because it is not about politics. It is not about targeting India. It is about regional security and international security to ensure that this sensitive material is secured by countries who are responsible as per their own laws.
Yeah, Dr. Adil, shouldn't IAEA, form a kind of team of observers from the nuclear states and send in India and probe the cases?
IAEA doesn't work like this. IAEA is just responsible to ensure that the safeguards agreement that are negotiated with states, those are implemented. So that's the mandate of the IAEA. Otherwise, IAEA cannot do much about by sending people or inspector teams unless authorized by United Nations or agreed mutually.
Right. Thank you very much, Dr. Adil Sultan, for being with us and taking the time out to be a part of the debate. Farrukh, it seems to me that nothing really can be expected or done in terms of a serious consequence to what India does. Not international institutions, not norms or laws, not highlighting or raising our voice on different platforms, not even questioning those platforms, or the tragedy that is going on with the suffering of human rights and people in general, but just perhaps the choices that powerful countries in the world will make whenever they make it.
Right, Sana, and this is something that has been actually really keeping me up in the nights. I tell you why. One, there's a deja vu moment for me. This was India's nuclear safeguards was perhaps the first story that I did in my journalism career. It is immediately after they exploded their Pokhran nukes, right? And I remember interviewing a lot of foreign experts on this, and they were sure that India's nukes are actually loose and compared to Pakistan, because Pakistan had to actually was forced to multiply its safeguards, and we kept on doing it even after 2004-5. But regarding what is going on in India and how it is impacting the world, India was let into the Committee of Nations and particularly liberal democracies for one reason, that India is the largest, so-called largest democracy in the world. But what has happened now, when you cannot actually stop your own decay, what do? You start actually impacting the system so that it doesn't notice that you have gone awry. And
Right.
that's why the worry is that from the rise of far right in the Europe and America to the decline of international institutions, India is playing that part of bringing it down, and that worries me, because if that is done, the evolution of past 70, 80 years will be down the drain.
Yeah.
Right, and this, of course, is a worrisome situation. Yes, Faisal, quickly, we have an excess
Yeah,
waiting.
quickly, I just wanted to say, the funniest and the most dangerous thing is that twice when, two of the criminals who were caught carrying this uranium, they were carrying them in shopping bags, just like it's a fruit or it's a sort of some vegetable.
Right.
And this is
The state
this
of
is the
affairs,
state
yes.
of the affairs of India right now. And the most dangerous thing is, we know that ISIS, they have very well educated people within them as well, and they have shown in the past that they are they can make bombs, they can, like Farrukh was mentioning, dirty bombs, they can do that. What if this uranium is ending up in their hands and they utilize it for that? This is something to be worried about.
This, of course, is a serious concern, and you're right that the situation is worrisome. But it seems to me that this view is not being shared by people around the world, which in fact is the most worrisome thing. Let us move on to our next segment with reference to what is going on in Afghanistan and the terrorist attacks that have been going on in Pakistan, and the kind of accusations that we get from the Indian side, despite the blatant violations that the Indian regime has been doing with regards to what is going on within Pakistan as well. We have been joined by Mr. Anwar Iqbal, who's a senior journalist. He's joined us on telephone line. Thank you very much, Mr. Anwar Iqbal, for joining us. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Right, Mr. Anwar, you've also written on this today, and you've spoken about what is going on with reference to Pakistan. And Pakistan has brought this into light many times before as well, that India has been playing a major role in terrorist attacks within Pakistan as well, something that has been reiterated again. However, it seems that the kind of calls for action that we're putting out, especially to the United Nations Security Council as well, have not been, and perhaps are not being met with the kind of response that we want, or the kind of consequences there should be for such actions. How do we bring that into action or into light when we call out or reach out to institutions such as the UN, or platforms such as the UN Security Council, ensuring that there is action taken?
Well, this was expected. India is heading the Security Council for this month, I think, or perhaps a little longer. And Pakistan knew that this was going to happen, that they will use this opportunity to create problems for Pakistan, as they did before, over Afghanistan, over Kashmir, and other issues. And they're obviously going to highlight the issues that suit them, and they're going to use this chance to promote their views on this major international forum. So Pakistan, as expected, responded to these charges. So this is something that has been going on within the UN Security Council and other fora in the United Nations between India and Pakistan. And Pakistan has always pointed out that whenever India has any influence in Afghanistan, it uses it to create problems for Pakistan, particularly in Balochistan and some parts of KP. They have done that in the 70s. They have done that later too. They are doing it now. And Pakistan wants this international body to do something about it. But of course, we know that the United Nations can only do so much. The best they can do is to provide both India and Pakistan a platform to get their message across. And that's what's happening in New York now. Both sides trying to send their messages and counter each other.
Right.
Okay.
Anwar Iqbal sahab, you have been reporting meticulously from Washington, D.C. and also New York whenever there are sessions. Let me ask you a very simple question. At this moment, it seems that we are talking about the role UNSC can play. What role can UNSC play in stopping infiltration from Afghanistan? That is the biggest question right now. Secondly, we are talking about UNSC, and help me squaring this circle. That we are talking about UNSC, where India already is present, and Pakistan, whenever there is a closed deliberation, Pakistan loses its voice because we don't have a seat. And when India, despite the fact that Pakistan was pointing out what India has been doing, when it came to electing India to the UNSC, Pakistan also voted for it. Help me understand these two things, sir.
See, the United Nations obviously is an organization that represents the interests of various state groups within the United Nations, various power circles, and obviously whatever happens in the United Nations reflects their views on various issues. These days, there is one ray of hope for Pakistan is that we have seen recently a slight but positive change in U.S. attitude towards Afghanistan. Before that, it seemed, and also I would say on India, before that it seemed as if because of China, the United States was willing to let India do whatever it wants in Kashmir or in Afghanistan, as long as India continues to approve U.S. policies on China and continues to cooperate with the United Nations on this front. But now it seems that the Americans realize that India is not what they thought India was. India has its own interests, India has its own gains, and it can only go so far with the United States. Number one. Number two, there is also a strong realization, and probably this is even more important, there is a strong realization in Washington that if you want peace in Afghanistan, you cannot ignore Pakistan. There can be no peace in Afghanistan without Pakistan. Pakistan has influence in Afghanistan. Pakistan has borders with Afghanistan, and Pakistan will continue to play a significant role in Afghanistan. So what the Americans want now, after leaving Afghanistan, is to ensure that Afghanistan is not used for terrorist activities anywhere. And that creates an opportunity for Pakistan to use this change in U.S. attitude or U.S. policy to say that when you say no terrorist activities in Pakistan, that means also in anywhere, that means it also includes Pakistan. So there should be no attacks from Afghanistan into Pakistan. And then Pakistan, in the past, prepared two sort of set of documents showing Indian involvement in Balochistan, and Pakistan are obviously now trying to persuade the United States and other nations that this is what the Indians have been doing. Please help us in stopping this.
Yeah, Anwar Saab, last time when we talked, you were for the better light in your kitchen, and we miss your kitchen. And the question
Going
is,
after that as well.
I'm still there cooking something.
Yeah.
You see, everybody goes to school. Go ahead, please.
So the question here is that we have India, that has made Kashmir as one of the most militarized zone in the world, number one. Number two, the Kashmir is like fortified. The line of control is all packed up by their forces. And if we look at the current situation, they have forces everywhere to control the line of control. But here they are, keep on blaming Pakistan that we are funding and we are sending in all of these freedom fighters. They call them terrorists, and of course the total freedom fight which is going on, they are the Kashmiri youth. Time and again it has been proven that they are the ones who are fighting against them for the right of freedom they want. And same was the case when farmers protests were going on. We saw that India kept on blaming the farmers the Sikh farmers are supported by Pakistan, and that's how it is happening. And then later on, they reversed their own decisions, and they started calling them, oh, we were just blaming you, and there was nothing as such. So shouldn't we say that still I mean, they keep on coming up with this kind of funny ideas that Pakistan is behind it, whereas the world knows that there is a freedom struggle going on in Kashmir, but India is insisting that world should buy their kind of narratives.
But-
Does it make sense?
But is the
And
world
can I
really
also
looking at it that
get
way?
the answer to the previous question that I asked about this magic moment when all of a sudden, despite fighting with India all the time, quarreling with India, Pakistan ended up voting for India in UNSC, sir?
Oh, that let me address that first. That you have to, because this is a regional arrangement, and there have been occasions on which India voted for Pakistan despite all the animosity, and Pakistan also has voted for India. That you cannot avoid because there is an understanding within the region that they will put one candidate together so that they retain their seat and their influence within the United Nations. That arrangement, I think, nobody would like to disturb. Now, going back to what said about Indians' claim on Kashmir. Well, I think during this sort of last 2 years or since 2019, when India forcibly merged Kashmir with the Union, since then there has been a gradual change in perception. Before that, I would say there were certain events that helped India in promoting its view that Pakistan is instigating trouble in Kashmir. But now, I think the world is getting convinced that it is not just Pakistan, it's not just India. What is happening in Kashmir is an indigenous movement. You have seen human rights groups, you have seen Amnesty International, you have seen other organizations, media groups talking about what's happening in Kashmir. So I think now the world is not willing to buy the Indian narrative that whatever is happening in Kashmir is Pakistan's doing. No, people do see that there is an indigenous movement for freedom in Kashmir. How far the world is going to support that movement is a different question. I mean, that's where you get into sort of power politics and into economic influence and all other things. And so whether they actually do something or not about Kashmir, there is a realization that whatever is happening in Kashmir is indigenous.
Right, I was just going to come to that. So the maximum thing that we're going to perhaps be able to get from bodies like the United Nations Security Council or other countries from around the world is going to be condemnations or verbal acknowledgement of what is going on in Kashmir or how Indian territory or Afghanistan's territory is being used for terrorist activities, but no real action. Is that a reasonable expectation?
Obviously, what else do you expect from the United Nations?
Well, then what else can we do for that matter?
Well, I think what we are doing, we should continue to do, which is take a strong diplomatic and political stance on Kashmir, promote our stance, talk about it, without getting involved in any armed struggle. Involvement in any armed struggle will hurt both Pakistan and the Kashmiris. So I think we should continue doing what we are doing now, a bit more forcefully, talking about Kashmir and problems inside India whenever and wherever we get a chance to do so.
And this strategy should be in place despite how the situation changes or escalates.
Well, I mean, no. I mean, nothing is static. Nothing is forever. You have to you have to
Seems like
change
though, because
your,
so much time has gone by.
Well,
No?
time, unfortunately, the internet, yes, you're right. But unfortunately, we do not have too many supporters in the world. It's very unfortunate, but India's economic influence is actually, it has had an impact, and therefore, we need to play our cards very carefully.
Right. Thank you very much, Mr. Anwar Iqbal, for being with us in the debate and being a part of the show. It seems, Farrukh, that at the end of the day, what anyone has to answer is the fact that these are your options. This is the maximum extent that it's going to be heard or it can be used. And we can only hope for change or actions or realizations from international bodies and countries.
Right, and that
Is
is
that
a
true,
very,
or is that a sad
I must
analysis?
compliment you, Sana, for asking very direct questions, and they were really, really good questions coming out of our own hearts, right? And that is the part frustration with the international system and part frustration with one's own inability to do much about this, right? But there are 2 or 3 things that you have to remember. The first thing that you have to remember is that any strength or weakness is not acquired in a single day. It actually takes decades, if not centuries, to gain or lose power. India has been consistently doing it, and we have not been availing such opportunities. The second thing is our internal unity. Our political scatterbrain attitude is such that we keep on competing against each other. Last time Nawaz Sharif was out of power, and I'm talking about 1990s, he was giving interview to Kamran Khan and New York Times and Washington Post regarding Pakistan's nukes, which were not even detonated at that time, right? That also harms your image.
Absolutely.
The third thing is, it's always economy stupid. If you want to build up, India is self-destroying right now. It is undercutting its own economic base. You can actually build yourself up in the age of COVID, and you can use that clout. Pakistan is not a small country. Pakistan is the 5th or 6th largest population-wise country. I mean, 200 million plus people.
Right.
It's a big market, and then you have access to China as well. So we can build on all these aspects and build a kind of clout that will have impacts, but it will take time.
So what we need to do is have more internal efforts with regards to giving more weight to our voice.
Yeah, single-mindedly.
So perhaps not raise our voice more or in various fora, but actually also increase the weight or substance of our voice.
Human beings are capable of doing more than one thing at once.
Absolutely.
So you can raise your voice and keep on fixing your own problems as well.
If I could add in, Farrukh has mentioned an excellent point that Pakistan should portray itself, that it is a big country. And there are certain ways that Pakistan can enhance its influence. One could be that connecting itself with the Central Asian republics and through Afghanistan, all of these countries, if they are connected economically, relying upon CPAC and Gwadar, then there will be a time that Pakistan will have that kind of influence, and Central Asian republics as well, they will be relying on. And you must have been seeing that India has been trying to have its own influence in the Central Asian republics. Why? Because they wanted to create a sort of circle and defensive offense doctrine and all of that. So they just wanted to create a circle around Pakistan. Why can't Pakistan do it? And Pakistan can do it through its, geopolitics.
I just want to actually, he praised my point, and I'm going to do exactly opposite and highlight something which I thought is flawed in our collective imagination.
Right.
Whenever we talk about Pakistan, we end up talking about neighbors. Oh, come on. 200 million people, let us focus on us first. Build us up. If we are good and if we are effective, if our exports to the world is a great brain trust, we are going to have influence. Remember, other countries will be there no matter what. But at this moment, see, Narendra Modi's government for past 8 years has been a godsend for Pakistan because it has been just burning down India, right? And yet, look at what we have been doing. We have not been able to capitalize on this opportunity because of the infighting, political infighting.
Absolutely.
2014, 2017, 2018, and God knows what else.
And there's so much that Pakistan has been doing with regards to making an effort in this way and more in highlighting these issues. But you're right, there are many other options that we can still utilize, still work on and improve. And so we've not exhausted all that is out there for us to do. And that perhaps is what Pakistan should be doing, and hoping for the best in terms of what the international community decides to do about the situation in India as well. That's it for now from the debate. We'll join you tomorrow at 9 only on PTV World.